Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the 1871 podcast. I'm your host, Mark Roach, and your co-hosts are former Royals left-back Dylan Kerr and Reading fan Johnny Hunt, who is definitely a Royals legend, judging by his 28,000 Twitter followers. And just to put that in context, that is double the number of followers that A.D. Williams has got. And Dylan, you've also got more followers than A.D. Williams as well. So for anyone who wants to follow Johnny, he's at Hunty Royal on Twitter, and Dylan is at Legend3. And don't forget, you can follow the 1871 podcast on Twitter and Instagram at 1871 podcast. And just a heads up for you that next week's guest is none other than 80s goal machine, Trevor Senior. But now it's an absolute honour, privilege and great pleasure to introduce our special guest this week, the legendary former Royals manager, Steve Coppell. So, Steve, hello and a very warm welcome to the show. How are you?
No, I'm great. Thank you very much. Yes, enjoying life. A lot less hectic than my days at the Majewski, but enjoyable all the same.
Well, it's absolutely fantastic to have you on the show, Steve. Thank you so much for joining us. But before we speak to Steve, and before we have a chat with Steve about his time at Reading and the current Royals team, it's fair to say that it has been a very eventful few days for the Royals. A 3-2 win at Preston on Saturday, followed by the announcement that Veljko Paunovic was no longer the manager. Then came the news that Paul Ince and Michael Gilks have been put in interim charge, and Noel Hunt is back at the club as under-23s manager. And I heard that Paul Ince has said that he thinks Reading played like Barcelona in the first half. So, Johnny, I'm going to come to you now. What do you make of an extraordinary last few days for Reading?
Well, I said last week it's never boring, and it's proved it, isn't it? Jeez. You get a win, sack the manager, or the manager resigned. And like I actually like Paunovic as a person, as a human being, he's a lovely guy, and it's copped a lot. Change needs to be made, but timing and everything else, who knows? The game on Saturday, I was following it, and typical Reading, 3-0 up, you're going, 3-1, 3-2. Oh, here we go again. But by some fortunate thing, we actually got through and won the game. Going, positive evening. Sack, the manager goes. Paul Ince comes along. Tom Ince must have said, my dad's available. Fancy giving him a job. Go for it. You can't make it up, really, can you? Like, it's just like a football soap opera.
And Dylan, I come to you now. What are your thoughts about Paul Ince and Michael Gilks as interim managers?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a change from the usual that Reading have appointed in the past few years, with foreign coaches that can come, who think they can come into the country and know the English game, but they don't really know the English game. They don't know the mentality of the English players. Obviously, I heard that Michael Gilks was going to be, the interim coach. I didn't know that Paul Ince was going to be coming with him, but. I'm going to ask Steve this question. Why is it now that English managers and English coaches are being overlooked for all these foreign coaches that, are coming from, not, I wouldn't say a good background, but not really a background in football, so whether it's going to work or not, John has just said that, they were 3-0 up, the manager resigns, he gets fired, his time's up, whatever it is. Reading have got to survive in the Championship. So, for once, they've actually brought in a coach or a manager that's English. So I think that's a good thing. But then again, I'm going to ask Steve that question.
So, Steve, over to you. We've got loads to talk about, but wants to know your thoughts.
Well, I think in terms of coach or manager appointments now, I struggle at a lot of clubs to understand how and why certain people have been appointed in that particular position. Again, looking at the situation here, it looked as if the manager who left was under a lot of pressure, a lot of strain. ideal in a way for him that he left on a high with a great result away from home. It doesn't solve the real problem, though, of, the club is going into a deep downward spiral. And I've lost a lot of connections. I'm still connected, but I don't have current connections with anybody at the club. I don't speak to anybody about the present situation. So maybe you could fill me in and tell me who makes the footballing decisions now? Who decides what's going on? Is there an end game? Is there a plan? The coaches, I would prefer to see English coaches because I'm a proud Englishman, but I also appreciate that a lot of foreign coaches can bring different aspects, which are very, very important. So I've got an open mind whether it's a new coach who comes in is foreign or English. But why are these people appointed? For what reasons? What is their brief? What are they told to achieve? What is success? What is failure? Is it a cheap option? Is it an easy option? These are the things somebody somewhere is accountable for it all. And to see Reading in the position it's in, from afar now, it's really, really sad for me, I must admit. And, before that game on Saturday, you could only fear the worst. So I hope it's a little bit of a corner turned. I hope that Ince can come in with Jotzi and really revitalize. They call it the bounce now, don't they, when they have a new coach? So I hope that they can come in, get a bounce effect, which is perhaps a little bit more sustained, and prove to whoever is making decisions in charge that they have a right to be there and have a claim to be there perhaps in the long term.
And Steve, in answer to your question, by the way, we have no idea. We don't know. We don't know what's going on. We'd love someone to tell us. But obviously, you were so successful your time at Reading, and we hope it's a bounce, and we hope that bounce continues and transforms into better form and Reading going up the table. But let's go back 12 years to that amazing championship title winning season, a record 106 points, and then you followed that up by finishing 8th in the Premier League the following season. I just wondered, firstly, how do you feel now when you look back on all that you achieved as Reading manager?
With huge affection and pride. I would say that because it was a process. Again, it was almost a mission. Before I got the job, I'd spoke to Alan Pardew about the situation, and Alan's a good manager. He knows his football, he knows his players, he knows the importance of correct recruitment. And if you look at, our best team, half of the team was recruited by him. So he laid really, really solid foundations. Then I came in and, from memory, I think my first year I finished 9th, second year 7th, and I'd signed a 3-year contract. So you didn't need to be Einstein to realize that if I didn't get promotion or pretty damn close to promotion in my 3rd year, I'd probably be on my way. And we made a couple of subtle changes about the way we were doing things, based on the premise that keep on doing what you're doing, you're going to get more of what you got. And I had a feeling that unless we made a couple of big changes, we wouldn't, reach that higher echelon. So, personnel changes. We had the immense good fortune to sign Kevin Doyle. We signed Leroy Lita as well. That was part of our, attacking plan. I always said to get out the division, you need to have 2 strikers, and there may be different people at various times during the season are going to score you 40 goals at least. So we had 3 top quality strikers, and they certainly satisfied that. But we also brought in a management company who analysed the personalities, not only of the players, but also of the staff, which was, I think, unique at the time. They came in, Catalyst was the name of the company. Mark Reynolds was the man in charge of that company. He'd been working for Saatchi and Saatchi. So he was looking at things purely from a business point of view. and we made conclusions about the dynamic of the staff and the way the players learned, because players learn things in different ways. Some are touchy-feely, some are talky, some need to be shown on a blackboard or video or whatever. So we designed a totally different way of doing things, but still based around the core values of attacking football. You know, I was brought up at Manchester United, which was get the ball forward and wide, make defences spread when they defend, and get crosses into the box. And that was our basic philosophy. It was obviously tinkered with an awful lot over time, but we just wanted to attack. You know, we thought our best way of winning games was to score more goals than the opposition. We weren't that bothered about conceding goals because we knew we had firepower. So, you know, looking back now, it was a 3-year process. And I look at the third season, we'd had a brilliant pre-season. I thought we were going to smash the league. And then first game, Plymouth at home, what everyone would have called a 3-point banker, and we got beat 2-1. The desolation I felt after that game driving home was, you know, I was lower than a snake's belly. You couldn't have got me off the floor all weekend. And then we played Brighton on the Tuesday, and I still maintain that was our most important game. We won that. Glenn Little, superb. And then we steamrolled everybody. It was an awful good feeling going into games knowing that you should win. That sounds stupid in football now in terms of the way people say, oh, think positive and all this. But in football, I think to a certain extent, football people are fatalistic. They sometimes think the worst. Fear is the biggest motivation. But there were a lot of games we played teams, and you could sense the fear when they came into the stadium because they knew they were playing a good side. And, you know, we did stupid things. We painted the away dressing room a horrible colour because we didn't want the away team to feel comfortable. It was like a rhubarb purple kind of thing. It was terrible. But again, it was all designed to get just an edge, any kind of edge, to get us over the line, to win games, to accumulate points, to win the league. And, you know, I think we were promoted in March and, you know, 106 points. I still have a minor celebration myself every year when teams who look at it at various times, they might just get close. As soon as they can't get close, I just have a nice, refreshing pint of lager.
Steve, that's your question, right? You said that you made 2 important signings, Kevin Doyle and Lita, right? Who made those signings? Who makes them signing? Back in the day, who made it? Did you feel that, was it your choice? Was it your assistant coach's choice? Was it the management choice? Was it, you know, you brought them players into the club that made the difference? Right now, you've got agents bringing players from all over the world. Who brought them players in? Did you bring them players in? Did you identify them?
We're both those players. Like, I'd seen Leroy a lot. Brian McDermott was critical. Brian McDermott, when we got promotion, had a role I'd never seen before. He was reserve team manager and chief scout. And he looked after the reserve team. He still has a fabulous manner with people. And he'd brought Leroy onto the radar. We'd all watched him. You know, I would say that Nick Hammond had been quite a few times. I'd seen him. I just liked his hunger for goals. You know, there was no agent. Well, I can't even remember agent pushing any of the players we had. You know, we made the decision. We all saw Leroy a lot of times. It was a big signing for us, £1 million. And the chairman, who was a little bit careful with his money at the best of time, had to be persuaded. But it was very much, you know, we felt that this was one of the final pieces in our jigsaw. Kevin Doyle was, again, a culmination. Eamon Dolan, who was our academy manager, his brother was Pat Dolan. who used to be the manager of Cork. He fell out of favour with the Cork people, and he recommended to us to have a look at this player, Kevin Doyle. Again, Brian McDermott went over, saw him play a few times, and he said, yep, top quality. And I always remember I went over, and I think I saw him play at Shamrock Rovers. And it was an evening game. And usually when, like all the scouts do in this country, I'm sure you've seen them, they all leave 10 minutes before the end.
Yeah.
But I was at Shamrock Rovers, and I thought, well, it's pointless leaving before the end because I've got nowhere to go other than the hotel. I don't have to beat the traffic anywhere. It doesn't bother me. And I stayed right until the end of the game. And to be honest, Doyle hadn't done anything. For 88, 89 minutes, I looked at him and I thought, I can't see what the others are seeing. And then again, 89th, last minute of normal time. Throw in on the edge of the opposition box. He received it into his body, turned the defender, beat two other defenders, and slotted the ball into the corner of the net. And straight away, I said, right, you're going to be ours. And we signed him. And the great thing about Kevin Doyle at that time, he came to us in the middle of the Irish season. So he was fit as a flea. So as soon as he came involved in training with us, he was at peak fitness while everyone else was trying to catch up. So all of a sudden, Kitson, Lita both knew they had top quality opposition to become two of the two strikers. It wasn't just because they were more senior. Kitson and Lita would be the two ones. Doyle from day one was right at the top of his game. So, you know, I knew I had the luxury of any 2 from 3. But I think in the whole of that season, I only had to make that decision, which 2 from 3, on 2 occasions, because either one was injured, suspended, or somebody else was injured. I think there were only 2 games I had to make that decision. So they were the 40 goal people we had to have to get promotion. There are other formulas to get promotion out of the championship, but for me, if you're 2 strikers, and now people don't even play with 2 strikers, do they?
No.
2 strikers. If you've got the 2 strikers who score you 40 goals, you're halfway there.
And then it continued into the Premier League. I think it was the Premiership back then, was it? It just continued. You had that momentum. You know, they kept scoring, and you finished the season in 8th. What a brilliant season it was. And I think I'm right in saying you had the FA Cup game against Man United as well, and you ran them close as well. I think that season, didn't you? You know, that season in the Premier League. You know, obviously getting up there was the big thing at that moment. But then you prepare for a season in the Premier League. Did you go beyond what you hoped you would achieve that season?
Well, the great thing about, first and foremost, the team who got promotion, but the team who also played in the Premiership, that none of the players, they were so hungry. None of the players had played in the Premiership. You know, we didn't have one player who would say, well, when we were in the Premiership, when I was playing for Arsenal, Tottenham, whoever, we used to do things this way. We had a blank sheet. And we had a mutual drive and determination. And I would say that every day in training, you know, with Dill, with Wally, with myself, Brian, Nigel Gibbs, who joined us, you know, there was a real concerted effort to train the way we played, at a real peak of intensity, which we did. And again, in that Premiership season, at the start of the season, we had a team meeting, and we more or less weren't bothered by the results of 10 games. You know, we said, like, your Liverpool's, your Arsenal, Tottenham, the big 5, if we get anything out of those games, it's just a bonus. You know, it's a huge learning curve. Let's go in there not bothered about losing. You know, let's try and attack them. Let's try and nick a few points here and there. If it happens, great. You know, our focus was on the other 28 games or whatever it was. We thought That's where we've got to be our very, very best. And again, we were attacking. We were a front foot team. We didn't go anywhere. Well, let's keep it tight and we might nick a goal and a set piece or something like that. When we got the ball, we wanted to attack. And we had very, very capable players who were, as I say, just hungry to achieve something.
So has the system changed? Or is it the coaching mentality now of European-based coaches that's coming into the country? As the system, obviously systems have changed to like playing, like you said, one striker. You know, you had a way of wanting to play, right? So what's the difference now compared to when you were at Reading for Reading Football Club? You know, how well, not just Reading Football Club, for football now, as you as a coach, as a manager, did. And respect to you for mentioning Nigel, Dill, you know, Brian, and all the staff, because that's important as well. That, you know, the recognition you give to the people that's working for you. So what's changed from Reading, from, you know, when you were in charge to the way that they are right now?
It's totally different, Dylan. It's a real. You get. I certainly, I would say I'm classed sometimes now as being a dinosaur. And when we played, you know, the thing you would hear on a daily basis was, can you play it forward? You know, if someone had an easy pass square or backwards in the name of keeping possession, I would say to them, I can do that. You know, at the time I was 50 odd, and I'd say, I can do that. I don't want people just to pass the ball square and backwards. If you can, take the gamble. The most important thing in football is where you lose the ball. If you lose the ball on the edge of your own box, trying to play out from a goal kick, you're in deep trouble. If you're capable of doing it, brilliant. But there aren't many goals scored from goal kicks. Your own goal kick, and you pass the full length of the field, 10 passes, and you score. It does happen. And when it does happen, I appreciate them as much as anybody else. But, you know, our mantra was, can you play the ball forward? Ultimately, football is decided in a 1v1 confrontation in a critical position on the field of play, usually in the opposition box. So can you get it there to your match winners? Do I want Dave Kitson taking on a centre half in the box, knowing that if he gets half a yard, he's got a shot on goal? Yes. Do I want him coming back to receive it from the centre halves on the halfway line? Not very often. Yep. And the same with Doyle, Leroy Lita. Magnificent touch in and around the box on the halfway line with a big giant centre half up his backside. You know, not the best. So again, we look to play to our strengths. We were front foot team as much as possible. And again, we didn't mind losing goals because we knew we had the potential to score against anybody at any time. And, you know, now I look at some games, Pep Guardiola is magnificent, absolutely magnificent the way he teams play. I think it does help that he's got a bottomless pit as regards to budget, so he can buy the best players. But when I see, there's nothing worse than good football played badly. When you see teams attempt to play pass, lose the ball, lose a goal, and then afterwards you'll hear a coach say, well, we try and play football the right way. There is only one way to play football, and that is to win. You know, the only thing you learn when you get beat is how to get beat. You know, there are no lessons as far as I'm concerned. You know, how do you win football games? You score more than the opposition.
And Steve, I wanted to ask you about Sir John Madejski because, you know, such a fantastic period in the club's history with you, with Brian McDermott. You know, how much of the credit do you give to Sir John Madejski for the success of your time at the club?
Well, he said something to me that the day he offered me the job, and we had a sort of stuttering start, as it were. The day I joined the club, I actually signed my contract. he said to me, he said, "Listen, Steve," he says, "I want to make one thing very clear." He says, "I know nothing about football." He says, "But I do know business. So you take care of the football and I'll take care of the business." And for any coach, manager or whatever to hear somebody in authority like that say that kind of thing, I thought, I've landed on my feet here. And like, so John always says he knew nothing about football, but he certainly knew the questions to ask at the right time. When we did get beat, well, he would ask pinpoint. He'd watched that much football. He knew what was going on, but he didn't interfere. He was ultra supportive. I think the first time we got beat, or one of the first games I got beat as manager, we got beat by, I think it was Rotherham, 5-1 away. And he phoned me up over the weekend, and it was very much, "How are you?" "Well, I'm all right. I'm fine. Ready to go next week." And on the Monday, he took me out to lunch because he thought I'd be so down that, I needed him to sort of pick me up. And I said to him, "Chairman," I said, "this is football." I said, "You don't have to take me out every time we get beat." I said, "So, let's make this a one-off and let's get rolling from here." He was ultra supportive, a wise man, not a football man in the true sense of the word, but he knew football. Much though he would claim otherwise, he knew football. And the kind of relationship we had, I would say, was unique. There wouldn't be another club where a chairman would say, I'll foot the bill and you make all the football decisions. For a coach manager to hear that, manna from heaven.
Steve, I'm going to let Dylan and Johnny jump in with a question, but we've got a question for you via Instagram. It's from Ben Kelly. He's 14 years old from Tilehurst. He's a Reading season ticket holder, and he'd like to know what you make of the current situation at the club, and do you think now with what's happened with the new management coming in, Reading have got what it takes to stay up this season?
Well, I've only seen, little bits on TV this season. I haven't been to a live game. I will come before the end of the season. I'd like to give some kind of support. What's happened is sad. I hope to get out of this, everything sort of permeates down from the top, whoever is the top. I don't know. I haven't got a clue. And obviously, it seems as if you don't know who is the top, who's making the decisions and for what reason. Reading is in a fabulous location. There are a lot of things about it which are attractive other than the football. And I think you know exactly what I'm saying there. I hope that from now until the end of the season, to maintain status, that the football decisions take priority and there is support given. Any coach is only as good as the recruitment that is allowed to express himself with. If decisions are imposed on him, then it's a straitjacket, and no coach can perform in those conditions. So I hope Ince has the freedom to express himself as a manager, Jilksy to give him the knowledge, the local knowledge, as it were, and for the team to get the results that they need, and not to be looking over the shoulder at the last couple of the games of the year.
Go on, Dylan. One question from you, and then one from Johnny. Off you go.
Right. So, no, listen. I when I left Reading, I actually spent 2 weeks. Steve gave me a trial at Crystal Palace. Well, it was Steve Kember that brought me there, and Steve was the manager. Now, imagine me, a Man United fan that became a football player because of Steve Coppell and Gordon Hill, actually going to play for Crystal Palace. It didn't work out because I think they signed Kevin Muscat, and I enjoyed my time at Palace with one of my footballing heroes. My question is something out of it, right? From an English point of view to when you coached abroad, Steve, what was the difference? What was the difference from coaching in the UK than coaching in another country?
Well, I coached in India for 3 years,
Yeah.
and I took the job in the first place as an opportunity to see India, which was a great opportunity. But I soon realized that coaching in India was one of the biggest tests of my management skills, or anybody's management skills, because my first year there, we had 11, you could sign 11 foreign players, but you could only have 6 on the field at any one time. You also had 16 Indian players. Now, I was told that 90% of Indians speak English, and they can't. And not only that, but a lot of Indians can't understand each other. There are 30 main dialects in India. So some of the squad of Indian players, 16, as I say, some of those couldn't understand each other. Some of them couldn't understand English. I had 11 foreigners coming from Africa, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, a couple of English, me, Wally Downs, and Niall Quinn as the coaching staff. So you can imagine some of my team talks went through about 4 translators before they were actually accepted. So it was the ultimate challenge, and you had to do your work on the training field. There are not many grass football pitches in India. My first season was in Kerala, coaching, and we trained on a school football pitch. Now, you might think, well, that's not so bad. But the school football pitch was an under 11 football pitch. So it was like 3/4 size. So what a challenge to try and get over your ideas to 11 foreigners, 16 Indians, get them in a shape which they could understand, get them playing in a style which was a simple and again, square pegs and square holes. And it was a fabulous challenge. And that first year, we got to the final of the tournament, and we got beat in the final in front of 70-odd thousand fans at our home ground. We got beaten penalties after extra time. So in many ways, although it certainly wasn't glamorous, it certainly didn't attract a great deal of attention. But as far as I was concerned, it was a massive managerial challenge, and I loved it. Looking back, it was great. There were sometimes, as time progressed in India, that I always say in India, sometimes most days you would see something you wish you probably hadn't.
Yeah.
And I mean that in so many ways. But it's also such a fascinating country. How it works, I will never ever understand. 1.2 billion people, different religions, sects, and the population just seems to roll along. It's incredible. It's a fascinating country, and the football is coming along nicely. I'd still keep an eye on it. You're only allowed 4 foreigners in the team now, so the original plan was to increase the number of Indians, and that's what they're doing. So it's
brilliant.
Steve, we're almost out of time. I'm going to let Johnny get in one last final quick question. Go on, Johnny.
Oh, Steve, it's a pleasure talking to you. It really is.
Thank you.
One question I'll ask you: Do you miss the day-to-day football, be it management stuff, and would you come back to Reading in some shape or form? Noel Hunt's come back. I have to ask you.
Well, it's funny. I don't put myself out there. I don't go to be on TV or radio or anything like that. I just do my own thing. I go watch non-league football now an awful lot. I still have a passion for football. People always say to me, "Oh, you retired now," and I said, "Well, no, I'd like to work, but I think football has retired me." I think I've got a lot to offer. I mentored a couple of young coaches. I would still like to be involved somewhere because, over 1,000 games in the Football League, Premiership as well. I've got something to offer. I've got energy, but phone doesn't ring. So I'm quite happy with that because the wheel turns. The wheel always turns.
Yeah. We'll see if we can have a word with you, Steve.
I play golf with somebody. I've got to say this. I played golf for charity event last year with somebody, and the captain of the team introduced me. He said, "Oh, Steve," he says, "I haven't heard from you about you for so long." He said, "I thought you were dead." And I said,
Steve, we're really almost out of time now, so I'm going to have to wrap it up. And I just want to say thank you so much. It's been an honour and a pleasure.
You're very welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, boys.
Big game tonight against Birmingham. Come on, you Royals. And next week, Trevor Senior, our special guest. So join us next Tuesday from 6:30 p.m. And don't forget, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at 1871 Podcast. Thank you. Take care and good night. And come on, you Rs.